AI stands for artificial intelligence. It refers to a man-made machine possessing an intellect on par with that of a human being.
Is that even possible?
Possible. You've seen it with your own eyes. What the AI weapons are capable of. How Peace Walker carried out the boss's will in the end. No mere machine could ever choose to sacrifice itself like that.
I just can't see how a bunch of circuits and switches could have a will of its own.
It's called the ghost in the machine, Snake. And it exists.
What did you mean by the ghost in the machine?
Oh, that. It's a term coined by the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. You've heard of Descartes, yes?
I think, therefore I am.
That is the one. Descartes espoused the dualistic theory of mind and body. He believed that our thinking minds exist in a separate dimension from our bodies, which are governed by the laws of physics. But if that were true, then couldn't you say that a mechanical body, inhabited by a ghost mind, is a human being? Ryle criticized Descartes on those grounds, saying such a thing surely wouldn't be human.
Why'd you bring it up?
I wasn't thinking of Ryle in particular when I said it. I simply thought that if a person is composed of a machine and a ghost, perhaps the opposite is true as well. Perhaps, by placing a ghost inside a machine, we could, in effect, give birth to a new person.
And that was your idea for the boss AI?
The moment you ripped the memory board out, the mammal pod ceased to function. It should have been dead. And yet, Peace Walker righted itself, singing a song of peace. I couldn't help but feel that her soul had come to inhabit Peace Walker.
Let's say, hypothetically, there really was an intelligent machine. How would you prove it? What's the difference between a high-level computer and an AI?
It depends on what you choose to define as intelligence. For example, Snake, listen to my voice talking to you now. Suppose it were an AI.
Say what?
What if the living, breathing me sitting here drinking tea and talking to you were actually an AI, programmed to simulate my thoughts and my voice?
You're nuts.
No, I'm not. You couldn't prove I was a real human being, could you?
It'd be... No.
So if an AI is so advanced you can't tell it from the real thing, wouldn't you call that intelligence?
I'm not quite convinced.
But that's only one way to look at it. It's roughly how Dr. Turing explained artificial intelligence. The test I described is called the Turing test, in his honor.
Yeah, well, sounds like a bad joke to me. That singing monster of yours put me through hell. If I never meet one again, it'll be too soon.
Shame. And I was about to let an AI take my place in our conversation.
Don't even think about it.
Dr. Alan Turing is known as the father of computer science. It was he who formulated the basic theory of AI. During the war, he worked for GC and CS.
The government's cryptology school. The one that broke Enigma.
The very same. Without him, they might never have been able to decipher the Germans' code. But then, they arrested him.
Why? Weren't his some of the greatest contributions to winning the war?
Homosexuality was a crime in Britain back then, and he was gay. I know exactly how crushed he was. I feel it's my duty to further his AI research.
Like the imitation game, huh?
You know it then. The clue that inspired the Turing test came from a trifling little party game. You exchange written notes with another person behind a screen and try to guess their gender, whether they're a woman or a man, pretending to be a woman. It's surprisingly difficult to tell the difference. Man or woman, human or machine. What do the differences even mean? Dr. Turing was fascinated by the differences between men and women. Perhaps that's what led him to formulate his test.
What if you hadn't used the boss as the model for the AI?
What do you mean?
If the end goal is MAD, it seems like there are more suitable models out there. A military chief of staff, or a nuclear technician, even the president.
Patriotism, leadership, good judgment. Each of those qualities is essential when deciding whether to launch a nuke. And she had them all.
Wouldn't the president, too?
It's not enough. She had the will for it.
Will?
Let me explain, Snake. Peace Walker is a standalone weapon. It has to decide on its own whether or not to launch a nuke. It can't turn to anyone else for advice. It can't do its job if it's not prepared to take sole responsibility for the fate of the world. I know of no other human being who could bear that burden.
That's it?
There were technical considerations, of course. To begin with, the female brain is a more appropriate model for an AI.
Oh, wait, the female brain? What do you mean by that, modeling your AI after the female brain?
Snake, what is the human mind capable of that a computer is not?
Being lazy?
Interesting response, and not incorrect. But the answer I was looking for was empathy.
Empathy?
The ability to feel for others, to be more precise. Love for a child. Pity for the weak. Grief for the dead. All of these are particularly well developed in the female brain.
That's stretching it a little.
On the contrary, it's perfectly reasonable. The male brain, on the other hand, may be well suited for systematic thinking, but it's less able to empathize. In that sense, it's closer to a computer. So if your objective is to make the AI think more like a human...
You need to teach it how to empathize like a woman.
The novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, deals with this very problem. In the book, an empathy test is used to distinguish between machines and human beings. As machines become more and more advanced, our society will gradually become more and more systematic. Our cities will teem with robot-like people, unable to feel for others. We cannot allow that to happen. Computers must learn to empathize. The same goes for humans, only more so.
Well, what about yourself? You make these claims, and yet I've never seen you empathize with a real person.
It's true. Until now, I was a prisoner of death. It was my intention to die upon the completion of Mammal's development. She was my one reason to live.
But you changed your mind.
I did. Because she taught me the dignity of living. My eyes are open now. I want to go on living and seeing real people.
Huh. I see.
France has produced many philosophers over the years. Descartes, Bataille, Sartre, Baudrillard.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Sartre myself. He called Che Guevara the most complete man of the century, didn't he? Smart guy.
He does tend to sympathize with the left. And what else do you know about him?
That's it.
You know nothing else?
Nope.
Ooh la la! The man is one of the giants of existentialism, you know?
Existentialism? I've been meaning to look into that. Nothing more dangerous than sneaking in without first securing an exit.
No, existentialism. Sometimes I wonder if my English is not better than yours.
Sorry, I'm just not into philosophy.
Ah, is that so? I would imagine it might really enrich your life.
I'd rather take action now than spend time thinking about what we are or how we're supposed to live. I guess you could say I live my philosophy.
Interesting. That sounds like something Sartre would say.
Yeah?
He says we are born with no defined nature, and that we are free to make ourselves what we wish.
Free. So he was one of those devil-may-care kind of guys, huh?
No. Actually, he meant that because we are free to create our own life, we must take full responsibility for our actions. Man is condemned to be free, is how he put it.
Condemned to be free.
But then, others will take it upon themselves to define who you are.
I've been feeling that way lately. I keep telling people to call me Snake, but nobody seems to listen.
Sartre also says, hell is other people.
Hell. Well, we are outside of heaven.
Do you have an interest in the visual arts, Snake?
Not really. Please, no deep conversation.
But you have heard of Picasso, yes?
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Sadly, Monsieur Picasso, co-founder of Cubism, passed away in the south of France last year. France was his home, you know.
Huh? I thought he was born in Spain.
Do you know his full name?
Pablo Picasso. Anyone would know he's Spanish with a name like...
Huh. Shows what you know.
What do you mean?
Okay, here we go. Pablo Diego José Francisco de la Pala Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. What do you think? That was his full name.
Still, I don't see how...
A master of modern art. A genius who crafted over 100,000 works in various styles, spending the greater part of his life in France. The man is a part of our culture.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is of limited use in my field. But back to the point. Picasso was Spanish, right? Or am I missing something? He wasn't French, right? Right? Cecile.
What difference does it make? It does not matter if he was from Spain or from Mars. Picasso is Picasso. It does not change the fact that he lived in France, nor does it take away from his monumental legacy. Why do you care so much about where he was from, anyway? Whatever happened to the sans frontière part of Militaire sans frontière?
You started it.
France was his name.
What was that?
Nothing.
Tell me, Snake, do you ever put sweets in your rations?
Never thought about it before. Why?
Ah, I simply love them. French sweets are très délicieux. Everyone knows crepes, but there are also profiteroles, eclairs, madeleines, financiers. Then there's tarte-tatin, and you can't forget Savarin. Oh, and millefeuille, crepes, blancmange.
Yeah, you already mentioned crepes.
Ah, soufflés, croquembouche, cannelle, Florentine, Queen Amagne, peach melbas.
Finished?
And macaroons. I love those the most. Macaroon Parisian are the best. They are so cute and colorful, and they contain meringue, so they melt right in your mouth.
Wow. I'd no idea macaroons were that popular in France, too.
What do you mean in France, too?
Macaroons are those favorite cookies, right?
Oh, excuse you? Macaroons contain almond powder, not coconuts.
Don't they have peanuts in them? I've had them in Japan a few times. I thought they were called macarons.
Macarons? Some cheap imitation, I am sure. French macaroons have a long and distinguished history. They date back to the 16th century when Catherine de' Medici of Florence married into the French royal family. The story goes that her pâtissier shared the recipe after they arrived. That is a history of over 500 years.
So, they're originally from Italy, then?
Well,
Don't macaroons come from Italy, too?
Look, I do not really think...
Keep in mind, macaron is almost identical to macaroni.
Well, that settles it.
I cannot believe this! To associate macaroons with macaroni? You, Monsieur Miller, are an insensible oaf.
Hey, why am I the bad guy? Come on, Cecile, wait! Cecile!
Hello? Snake? Mon chéri?
You've been drinking, Cecile?
Can't you please do something about this pest?
Who?
Monsieur Miller!
What's he done now?
Wine.
Wine?
He said he thought the soldiers might tire of having beer all the time. So he's brought in some wine instead. And then he gave me a bunch.
Well, that was nice of him.
But the past 2 years have been bad for French wine. Perhaps it is the bad weather we have had. But whatever the case, I told him the last thing you want to be drinking right now is French wine.
Well, California and Chile have good wine, too.
But then he goes and stocks the pantry with nothing but French wine from 72. The stuff is a disaster. Then he says, "Come on, Cecile, have a taste of the old country." I had a terrible feeling about it. So, I decided just to taste it at first. And then again. And then a few more times.
Took one for the team, huh? But when you do a tasting, don't you usually spit the wine out?
But bottle after bottle, nothing but garbage. Absolute garbage. Not one half-decent bottle in the whole lot. Taste of the old country, he says.
Sorry to hear that.
Ugh, I cannot believe this. What will we do with all this wine?
The guys aren't too picky when it comes to taste.
Ugh, you sound just like Monsieur Miller.
Huh?
When I complained, he simply said, "As long as it gets the job done." You people are such culinary savages. Allez tout vous faire voir. Somebody take me back to Paris, please.
I think you've had a little too much, Cecile. You seem like a very, how do I put this, uninhibited woman.
You think so? I am no different from other Parisian women. Not since May 1968.
May 1968? The general strike that almost brought down the president?
Right. But it was more than just a strike. It started with the student movement at Strasbourg University in '66. They did not want anything from the country, but instead sought reform at the school. That helped ignite a fire in the hearts of scores of dissatisfied young people. And the movement spread all over France. It was more than just opposition to Vietnam and the de Gaulle administration. People also called for free love and the breaking away from other old values. Looking back, I am not sure what the main goal really was. But whatever the case, it was more of a young people's movement than a strike or a protest.
So, it was like the hippies or something?
In some ways, perhaps. But we weren't blinded by mysticism, nor did we seek a return to nature.
I see. So, while they wanted to retreat to their closed communes,
we tried to change the world. And in doing so, we learned that when everyone comes together, it can be done.
You had a lot more success. In America, hippies have just become a social problem, while I hear Japan's student movements crashed and burned.
I wonder what was different.
Good question. I'd like to know myself.